frightening turn of events from last week. And Khali dominating Batista.
In the world of WWE, the bright lights and high-flying action can captivate audiences for years. But every wrestler's career has a shelf life. Some superstars know when to call it quits, leaving the ring with their legacy intact, while others push their careers past their prime, often to the detriment of their legacy. While wrestling is a demanding profession, it's not uncommon for wrestlers to stay in the game longer than they should, either due to financial reasons, personal pride, or the allure of the spotlight. This list highlights WWE wrestlers who, despite having once been top stars, probably should have called it a day much earlier. Whether it's due to injuries, diminishing performances, or lack of fan support, these wrestlers stayed in the game long after their peak, often leaving fans to wonder what could have been if they'd bowed out at the right moment. From towering giants to powerhouse performers, these wrestlers all had their time in the sun, but their prolonged careers ended up doing more harm than good. Let's dive into some of the most notable WWE superstars who should have retired earlier, and the reasons why their extended runs weren't as legendary as they might have hoped. 1. The Great Khali. Let's start with the Great Khali, a name that immediately stirs up images of sheer size, but also a career marked more by his physical presence than his wrestling skill. Standing at an imposing 7 feet 1 inch and weighing 347 pounds, Khali's sheer size made him an obvious fit for WWE's larger-than-life roster. His debut in 2006 was part of a trend where WWE favoured size over actual wrestling ability, and Khali fit that mould perfectly. His early push was massive, debuting on SmackDown by interrupting a no-contest match between The Undertaker and Mark Henry. Talk about making an entrance. Following that, Khali had an undefeated streak, defeating notable stars like Rey Mysterio. His first big loss came at the hands of The Undertaker, but by then, his aura had been established. Khali's World Heavyweight Championship reign in 2007 was as good as it got. He squashed Kane and Batista in the same match, marking the high point of his career. But here's the catch. Khali was never a good wrestler. His matches were painfully slow, and his size didn't help his performance. After a series of cringe-worthy storylines, like feuding with Hornswoggle and a cringe-worthy Kiss Cam segment, it became evident that Khali was more of a novelty act than a legitimate WWE star. His continued presence in the company through 2017, long after his prime, seemed unnecessary. Had he retired post-2007, his career would have been remembered much more fondly. Instead, his later years were marked by comic relief and repetitive segments that didn't do anyone any favours. Khali could have exited the WWE much earlier with his dignity intact. 2. Tamina, the daughter of WWE Hall of Famer Jimmy Superfly Snuka, had a career in WWE that spanned over a decade, but much like the Great Khali, she never fully capitalized on her potential. Debuting in 2010, Tamina's imposing physique made her stand out, but despite her physical presence, she struggled to develop a true identity in the ring. While she was thrust into high-profile storylines, including being a bodyguard to AJ Lee and later feuding with Paige, Tamina never truly connected with fans in a meaningful way. Her character often felt like an afterthought, and she was more known for being in the background than for defining herself as a top-tier star. Throughout her career, Tamina was frequently relegated to supporting roles, whether teaming up with Nia Jax or as part of the faction team Bad with Sasha Banks and Naomi. Though she had brief moments of relevance, like her time with Team BAD, these instances didn't evolve into anything substantial. Her solo success was limited, and she couldn't fully break through to the top tier of the division. In her later years, Tamina found some success alongside Natalya, winning the Women's Tag Team Championship, but even this partnership didn't add lasting value to her career. Injuries, including ACL, knee and shoulder issues further hampered her progress, and by 2024 she was released from WWE. Despite her long tenure, Tamina's career reached its peak far earlier than it should have, and her string of underwhelming performances and injuries highlighted the need for a much earlier retirement. 3. Goldberg. Goldberg. A name that once struck fear into the hearts of opponents and lit up arenas with electric energy. His rise in WCW during the late 90s was nothing short of phenomenal, with an unmatched undefeated streak, explosive power, and an aura of invincibility. Goldberg became a household name almost overnight. His blend of intensity, physicality, and no-nonsense promos made him a standout figure in an era filled with larger-than-life personalities. When he initially left the wrestling world in the early 2000s, he left behind a legacy of dominance. But fast forward to 2016, and Goldberg's surprise return to WWE was met with mixed emotions. At first, nostalgia carried the day. His squash match against Brock Lesnar at Survivor Series was shocking and exciting. However, that initial spark quickly wore off. Goldberg, now older and less agile, struggled to maintain the energy and stamina that once defined his matches. His bouts became extremely short, formulaic, and lacked the storytelling and athleticism expected in modern wrestling. Worse yet, WWE continued to place him in main event scenes, often at the expense of younger talent. His victories over Kevin Owens and The Fiend Bray Wyatt for the Universal Championship were seen by many fans as regressive and damaging. These moments not only frustrated viewers, but also eroded Goldberg's mystique. By the time he retired again in 2022, the magic of his name had been dulled by a series of forgettable and often frustrating appearances. Had he stayed retired after his first run, his legacy would likely be viewed far more fondly. The Big Show. The Big Show, or Paul White, had one of the longest careers in professional wrestling, spanning over 2 decades in WWE. His early years, particularly his time in WCW as the Giant, were captivating. At that point, White was a towering figure who combined his massive size with surprising agility, making him a true monster in the ring. His debut in WWE in 1999 only cemented his place as one of the top superstars of the company, and his early feuds, including those with The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin, elevated his status to main event level. Multiple world title reigns solidified him as a cornerstone of WWE's top-tier talent. However, as time wore on, the Big Show's later years in WWE became increasingly lackluster. His physical decline, compounded by inconsistent booking and repetitive gimmicks, led to a career that no longer matched the excitement of his early days. Instead of remaining a dominant force, he found himself involved in filler storylines, often playing the role of a comedic figure or a giant lacking the real threat he once portrayed. Despite a few standout moments, such as his rivalry with Shaquille O'Neal at WrestleMania 33, his ability to deliver memorable, high-quality matches became more sporadic. After transitioning to AEW in 2021, White has remained a part of the wrestling scene, but his best years were clearly behind him. Had he chosen to retire during his peak, he would have been remembered as one of the most dominant and versatile big men in WWE history. Instead, his later years in the ring left a shadow over his once dominant legacy. Conclusion. The common thread among these WWE superstars is that their later runs did little to enhance their legacies, and in many cases, they did more harm than good. These were once larger-than-life figures who captivated audiences, headlined WrestleManias, and delivered unforgettable moments. But whether it was due to poor booking decisions, noticeable physical decline, or simply an inability to walk away from the spotlight, their careers continued well past their natural endpoint. Instead of going out on a high note, many were left struggling through lackluster storylines, embarrassing losses, or crowd indifference. This isn't to take away from what they accomplished at their peak. Their early years helped define eras, build brands, and inspire future generations of talent. But wrestling, like any sport or form of entertainment, often rewards those who know when to bow out gracefully. Hanging on too long can blur the greatness that once defined you. So, to these legends, we say this with both respect and honesty. Your past was iconic, but your legacy might have shined brighter had you stepped away while still on top. Sometimes, knowing when to say goodbye is the biggest victory of all.